Somebody asked me recently how my husband Dan and I have such a good relationship, and the answer is the same as it would be if you asked somebody who was really fit and consistently really fit, how do you stay in such good shape? It's their lifestyle. It's the habits that they have every single day that define who you are today. And Dan and I have good relationship habits. I think if you want a good relationship, it's like anything. If you want a good business, if you want a good career or something, you have to work at it. You can't just like meet the perfect person or come up with the great business idea and like have the perfect career. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, you have to work hard at it every single day. Like, I'm not saying it should be so hard that it's like upsetting you, but I'm just saying that like it's not so simple. Dan and I talk a lot, like, I'm obviously a very talky person. I can have a conversation with myself and a screen, and Dan is a very talkative person, and we're both very good at like articulating how we feel. Like, if I'm upset about something, I find it pretty easy to explain to somebody, I find it easy to explain to him, that I'm upset and why I'm upset. And it goes the same with Dan. Like, I think he finds it really easy to articulate how he feels to me. And that's helpful. Communication really is a very, very important thing. It's important to have, and it's as much, I think it's also very, people talk about, you should always communicate your feelings, which is so important. But you also need to assess the situation and know when you should communicate those feelings and when not to. Like, there are times that it's not the best time to say what you were feeling. Yeah, like, there's just certain, like, Dan and I work together, so we spend an awful lot of time together. And like, there's times when we're at work that like I might be upset about something or frustrated, or he might be upset or frustrated. Now is not the time though. We can't really like have a conversation about those kind of things in the middle of work. So like, sometimes I think, women try to talk to their husbands about something, or girlfriends try to talk to their boyfriends about something, and they get upset because they didn't really get the reaction that they were looking for. And a lot of that is because like they left it go, and then all of a sudden they just like word vomit all over the guy and like come out with a load of stuff that like they weren't expecting. Like, you can't say that like, my husband never listens to me, but like, you never really give him a chance to. You've got to build on communicating. Like, you can't just like one day wake up and say, okay, today's the day I'm gonna like tell him absolutely everything and just expect him to understand. And there's times that like I say things to Dan and he doesn't understand there and then. He doesn't understand in that moment. But he'll go and think about what I've said, and then he might come back to me a couple of hours later, a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, and then we'll revisit the situation, we'll revisit the issue. Like, I do treat our relationship not like a business in like the the sterile kind of sense, but like a business in the sense of like it's functional. There's a lot of love there, and there's a lot of romance, and like a lot of fun and a lot of spontaneity, but at the same time, like, it has to make sense. Like, like, it has to be like we're constantly progressing as a relationship, because at the end of the day, like, I've said it before, but like, things change all the time. I'm changing constantly. I can't not change. I'm always changing. Dan can't not change. He's always changing. The important thing is that like, as we both change, we continue to progress together. Like, and we've had times, we've definitely in the last year, where we've felt a little bit more distant from each other than normal. We used to go out, like, part of our weekly ritual was we would get dressed up together and go for a nice meal together, and have wine and go out drinking, and that was like very much part of our ritual. And I took that away. I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. And Dan could have taken that as being a dig at our relationship. And, you know, in some ways he did. In some ways he got quite upset about the whole situation. And I had to say to him, like, look, I understand that I'm changing. I understand that I'm maybe not the exact same person that I was when you met me. And my wants and desires now out of life and my day-to-day life aren't the same. And I understand if that's not, if you're not okay with that. Like, I understand if, you know, I understand if you got into a relationship with a different person and now you're in a relationship with this other person and you're like, what the fuck? You know, I understand that, and talk to me about it. So we did, and we had to meet somewhere in the middle. And, you know, I'm glad that we did. You don't have to sacrifice who you are to be in a relationship, and you shouldn't have to sacrifice who you are. But at the same time, you know, there's nothing wrong with meeting somebody halfway. There's nothing wrong with, like, sometimes I think I see people and, like, they've been single for so long and they like life the way it is. They like, you know, they like everything about their life, and then all of a sudden they meet someone and they move in with them and they find it very, very difficult to adjust to this other person in their life. And I think that's a bad thing to have, because we have to be okay. Like, it's so important to, like, learn how to adjust in new situations. You know, it's very important to be, like, put into any scenario and be like, okay, so these are the tools that I have, this is the situation that I'm in, how do I make this work? How can I make this work for me? It's like that in a relationship, I think. You know, Dan and I are constantly, like, the tools are changing, the scenario's changing, the backdrop is changing, and we're constantly figuring out, like, how can I make myself happy in this situation? How can I make the situation work for everybody? It's an important skill to learn. You can't learn that if you're on your own and you think that things only have to be a certain way and this is how it's done and this is my way and I'm not listening to anybody else. It's not a good way to be, you know. It's really not. I can get a bit like that myself. I really do. I get, like, I don't want to listen to anyone else, and I don't want to think that anybody else is right. But fact of the matter is, like, you can't know it all. Someone said that to me in hairdressing once, a brilliant hairdresser. You know, he said, like, never stop learning, you know, like, as soon as you think that you don't need to know anymore, like, that's when you're done. That's when you need to, like, put down the scissors, you know, because you can always learn more. You can always learn from people. Like, you're always learning and relearning, you know, because sometimes you learn something and it changes, you know, your opinion changes and the world changes and you change and things change and you have to relearn it. And that's something that I've learned from being in a relationship with Dan. Learning, relearning, ever learning.